If you think about literature and history and entertainment, often they're wrapped around the theme of family. The Rockefeller family and their lineage really helped shape American industry. And so when you think about famous families or powerful families, it is part of our American history. The Windsor family, of course, we're thinking a lot about them because of the Queen, but they have shaped English history. In politics, you have lots of famous political families like the Bushes, the Harrisons, the Adams, the Roosevelts, and it's not just that they produced, a few presidents, but lots of influences there. And so when you think about history, you think about these famous families, and of course in literature and entertainment, those things. But really, our interest is in our own family. Think about how much of your mental space your family takes up. How much of what you think about, the things that you're glad about, the things that you're worried about, how much of that has to do with family. Family really has such a huge part of our life. And we don't often think about legacies and carrying on the name like maybe a Rockefeller or a Bush or a Windsor might. But we do think about our family in the immediate. And again, that's probably an American thing. We don't think very much about posterity. Like for me, if I found out that 100 years from now there's any Hans from my lineage, it wouldn't really bother me. I don't really care, But to some people, if I had a regal name like George, I probably would. But Han, nobody cares about that. But we're often just interested in the here and now. I don't know about my great-great-grandchildren, but I know about my children, and hopefully I'm influencing them in such a way that will help their children as well. So we understand as well that not only is family important, but family is also under attack from Satan today, especially in America. Read an interesting survey just the other day from the Pew Research Center. They do a lot of polling and kind of taking government data and just kind of expounding on that. But they said something very interesting. So in 1960, think about 1960. So in 1960, 73% of children had two married parents. 73%. 14% had two parents that had been remarried, so living in some kind of divorced home. 9% of children were living with a single parent, and 4% were living with no parent. And generally, no parent means a grandparent or something. Okay, so that was in 1960. 73. So think about 73%, 14%, 9%, 4%. In 1980, just 20 years later, 61% of kids lived with two married parents. 16% lived with parents that were remarried. 19% of kids lived with a single parent. And again, 4% lived with no parents. So we jumped from 9% single parents to 19% in just 20 years. In 2014, so this is now 34 years later, 46%, a minority of kids, are living with parents that are married. They're biological parents that are married. 15% of kids are living with parents that have been remarried. 7% of children, and this is a brand new statistic, it didn't show up in 1960 and 1980, 7% of children are living with parents that are not married but are cohabiting. And again, that was a statistic we hadn't seen before. 26% of children in 2014 are living with a single parent, with only one parent in the home, and 5% were living with no parent. And so we just to see how quickly the numbers have changed. Really, in 2014, I don't know what it is for 2022, but 46% of children are living with the so-called nuclear family. And so families are under attack. And some sectors of society are trying to take rights away from parents, even within, not just marriage. So you hear they say that the divorce rates are down. Well, the divorce rates are down because people aren't getting married. Because people are just cohabiting. They're not even getting married, and that's why. But even within marriage is under attack, but family's under attack. And some elements of society are trying to take rights away from parents. Child abuse, parents against their children, is way, way up. This is from childwelfare.gov. It says this: during the fiscal financial year 2019, CPS, the Child Protection Services agencies, received an estimated 4.4 million referrals involving the alleged maltreatment of approximately 7.9 million children. So in 2019, there were allegations of abuse involving 7.9 million children in America. The national referral rate is 59.5 referrals per 1,000 children in the population. Of these referrals, approximately 2.5 million reports concerning approximately 3.5 million children were screened in as appropriate for CPS response and received either an investigation or alternative response. The national ratio for children receiving either an investigation or alternative response was 47.2 children per 1,000 in the population. So we see, of course we see, and you've seen this everywhere, parents against children. Parents just aren't listening to their parents because parents don't know what they're doing. Parents are not sure and they're not being very disciplined. But then we also see parents over-disciplining, or what I wouldn't call over-disciplining, just abusing their children. Paul didn't take for granted when he was writing to the Colossian church that Christians would just get it. And this is something, a question that was posed to me a while ago, and it's an interesting thing to think about. So, why, you'd think that if Christianity was real, that there would be a difference. And I say this morning in Sunday school that there is a difference. I really believe there is. But isn't it true that we also see problems in the church? I mean, it would be great if Christianity, if Jesus Christ made such a compelling difference that it was impossible that there would ever be the abuse of children in churches. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. Or that there would be divorce in churches. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. So Paul is writing to the Colossians here because he doesn't just assume that they're going to get it. That, oh yeah, well, they're Christians. Of course they're going to understand how to do family right. So we know he actually writes to them and says, this is important for you to understand. Christian families, what's going on here? I'm going to ignore it. Christian families should be the gold standard for the world. They should be the ones that are being emulated. Now, I will say this, that Christianity, the model that Christianity set forth, was different from the ancient world. In the ancient world, wives were really considered property. They had no rights whatsoever. The husband could leave the wife for any reason. He could have any number of relationships with other women, and the woman, his wife, could not have any other relationships with men. They were not allowed to go out in the marketplace. They basically stayed home and were a slave at home. And that was normal for the Roman and Greek world. Children were also property. A father could sell his child into slavery, man or woman, a boy or girl. He could work them. He could even, if he felt like that they were not doing what they should, he could even condemn them to be killed and carry out the execution himself. Again, this was normal. And so William Barclay in his commentary says this: the Christian ethic is one of mutual obligation, in which the rights and obligations rest with every man. It is an ethic of mutual responsibility, and therefore it becomes an ethic where the thought of privilege and rights fall into the background, and where the thought of duty and obligation becomes paramount. The whole direction of the Christian ethic is not to ask, what do others owe to me, but what do I owe to others? So, again, we're growing up in a Judeo-Christian ethic where we understand this idea, but this was radical, especially in the first century in Colossae. Whatever. This was paradigm shifting. This was paradigm changing, where what we're going to read, where parents and children and wives and husbands had an obligation to each other. Like, if this was written by a secularist in the first world, it would say, fathers, do whatever you want. Wives, do whatever he tells you to do, no matter what. Children, enjoy your life and hang on until you're ready to leave the house. And that would be it. And that's not what we see in this passage. We see an obligation to each other. So Paul's instructions, I really believe that what we're seeing here in verses 18 through 21 fold under this idea of put on, put off. In chapter 3, verse 10, having put on the new man, which is renewed in knowledge after the image of him that created him. In chapter 3, verse 12, put on therefore as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another, and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against any, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. And above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. Verse 17, and whatsoever ye do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God and the Father by him. So again, what we're going to read next is folded into this idea. Put off the old man, put on the new man, put on Christ. Let Christ live in you. And so Christ is at the center of this. So he embarks here on an admonition for society, for family, and for employment. We'll look at employment in a couple weeks. We're going to look at family here tonight. So what can we learn about a Christian family? So let's just take this one by one. Verse 18 talks about wives to husbands. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as it is fit in the Lord. Now, God established leadership in the home in the garden. Before the fall, the woman was called the help. She was a help meet for him, or a help that is suitable for him, or a help that was meant to be specifically tailored for him. Right? They are equal in that, but when it comes to who's in charge, from the beginning, and I really believe this, that it was in the garden established that the woman was there to help the man and in some ways be a servant to him and for him. Not less, but just different. Now, I don't believe that this came then as a curse in the fall. So some people have said, well, in Christ, all of those curses are done away with. Christ became a curse, and I do believe that. But since that's true, then men and women roles in the family don't actually matter. Well, I think Paul would have to say otherwise, because he's talking to Christians in the Christian worldview and saying, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husband. Now, because of this, because of God's ordained roles in the family, he calls the woman to submit. Now, the word submit means to arrange yourself under. So, to situate yourself under. It's not a call for a husband to subject wives, nor for men to subject women, but that the woman would put herself in position under his leadership. That the woman would voluntarily say, I'm going to let the man lead. I'm going to get out of the way and let my husband lead in my home. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as it is fit in the Lord. Now again, that doesn't mean that there aren't mutual obligations in a marriage. That there aren't some equalities in a marriage. The Christian ethic is not that the man is more important than the woman. Okay? Or that men are better than women. That is not the Christian ethic. The Christian ethic is this, that whenever you have more than one person, there's someone who's in charge. Any group. You have 8 guys playing basketball, somebody's going to be in charge. It's just the way it is. And the sooner you figure that out, the better, right? And so God says, this is what I want. The husband will be the head of the home. Now again, that means that there are still mutual things in the home. For instance, in 1 Corinthians 7:4, the wife had not power of her own body, but the husband. Ha! See? The rest of the verse says this. And likewise also the husband had not power of his own body, but the wife. So, why is it that God has established this? I don't know exactly, but I can say this, that God made man to want respect. There's one thing there's many things that men want, I guess, but what a man responds to is respect. A man wants to be, in some ways, respected for who he is. And it doesn't take very much. Guys, you know this already. So if women, you don't think this is true, just ask, not even your husband, ask any guy. How do you feel when someone disrespects you? Or when someone doesn't show you what you feel like is due you? That is one of the things that rubs us mostly the wrong way. And so the wife's role is to, in some way, reverence her husband. Now again, when we say the word reverence, we think of bowing down. That's not what it means. It just means to show him due respect, to show them respect. And God has hardwired men to want that. That's what we want. Do you want to be loved? Well, of course, we all want to be loved. But if you had a choice, guys, between being loved and respected, I think almost always we pick, we want to be respected. We want to be respected on the job. We want to be respected in all in your friendships. You want friends who are going to show due deference to you. Then the husband, so why is it that God has established this? Because the husband, God made us men to want respect. Second, because a husband has the responsibility to lead. And as he has the responsibility, as it is that the man will be held accountable for how he has been in the family, with that responsibility, he also needs the position of leadership. He also needs if the man advocates. So here's Amy and I didn't promise her that I wasn't going to use her as a sermon illustration, but here's Amy and I, and if I just say, I'm tired of fighting her, I'm just going to let her decide. It's not like God says, oh, Amy, then how did you lead the family? God will still look at me and say, Josh, how did you lead the family? And I can't be, but I gave her the job. God says it wasn't your job to give. It was your job. How did you do? And if I advocated, that's on me. So since I am going to be called out, since the long finger of the Lord is going to be pointed in my direction someday, I need to have the leadership. I need to be able to say that the final decision lies with me. Now, woe to the husband who will not listen to his wife. Woe to the husband who thinks that this means that only he can make decisions. That is just not true. But guys, when it comes right down to it, the buck stops with you. And make the wrong decision or the right decision, you've got to make the decision. And you need the Lord, and you need your wife to help you with that, but it's up to you. So, again, wives, why? Now, this isn't, I'm not even at the part where I'm tearing into the guys. I'm just saying, this is why it's so important for wives to get out of the way and put yourself under the husband, because you're not the one in charge. He is, and he needs your help. So, what's the problem with this? When we read, when we hear someone, gets this clip on Facebook and puts it out, what's this, pastor? Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, that is fit in the Lord. What's the problem with it? Well, the problem is that we don't like submission. We don't like submission to anybody. Nobody does. It makes us feel in some way like there's less. How many of us, whenever they come up with a new law, we're like, and even if it's a law we feel like is a just law, like, you got to put your seatbelt on, or now all the speed limits are this, we just feel like, oh man, any kind of rulership over me makes me feel less, like they're better than I am. And that's definitely a temptation. Or we feel like this is outdated. Paul was he was a misogynist, and he hated women, and that's why he was just trying to oppress them. And this is outdated. This is first century stuff. This doesn't apply for today, right? This isn't like a designed way. Husbands, problem number 3 is husbands don't always lead well. It's not very hard to find an example of some idiot husband who's ruling badly in his house and mistreating his wife. And to take that and say, well, this must be happening. This could happen in every case. If we just let it run rampant, if we let it run rampant, it could. It would be a lot easier, ladies, to submit yourselves if you could trust your husband that he was always going to make the right decision. I think in some ways you'd wish you weren't in charge if you knew that your husband would always make the right decision. And the sad truth is he doesn't. He doesn't. Also, there's the possibility of exploitation, and he may lord it over you. And so that for those reasons, it's tough, ladies, to submit to your husbands. The solution, however, is in verse number 18. Wives, submit yourselves unto the Lord as it is fit in the Lord. The word fit means proper. This is the proper way to do it. This is what God asks of you. This is what God commands you. This is not something that's it would be better for you. This is the proper way that God has designed the husband-wife relationship. Now, ladies, you're already submitted to Christ. Right? You're already submitted to Christ. We submit in all other kinds of areas. We're just called to submit to our husband. So over in Ephesians chapter 5, and I was trying to think if we were going to go back and forth. This is not very far away. So I know we did a lot of flipping back and forth here this morning. If you want to go back to Ephesians 5, because remember, Ephesians and Colossians are parallel books. There's a lot of similarities between the two. It's got to be worth looking at Ephesians 5, where it says in verse 22, wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let wives be their own husbands in everything. All right, so the example is Christ and the church. And over in 1 Peter, and you can make a decision whether you want to go to 1 Peter, but I'll be back, so you might as well. 1 Peter chapter 3, let's see here. 1 Peter 3, verse 1 says, Likewise, ye wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may, without the word, be won by the conversation of the wives. Meaning this, ladies, you are a public testimony to your husbands, and even if they never hear one sermon in their whole life, your testimony, your Christian life, will preach to your husband. While they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear, whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting of the hair, and of wearing of gold, and of putting on of apparel, but let it be the hidden man of the heart, in that which is not corruptible, even the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. For after this manner in the old time, the holy women also, who trusted in God, adorned themselves, being in subjection unto their own husbands, even as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord, whose daughters ye are, as long as ye do well, and are not afraid with any amazement. Verse 6 talks about Sarah, how she submitted to Abraham. Now, ladies, you know the story of Sarah. Did Abraham always do the right thing? We're going into Egypt, and they're going to see you, and you're beautiful. You're 65, and don't look a day over 25. And this Egyptian, he's going to want you for himself, and the only way to get you is to kill me. So would you just tell him that, not that you're my wife, but that you're my sister? And she did. She obeyed her husband, and the Lord protected her, and the Lord took Abraham to task. Abraham. And twice, right? But the Bible commended her. Now, calling him Lord, that was in the part that we read this morning in Genesis, where they have Isaac, and she says, is it really this that I would have pleasure of having a baby, and my Lord would have a pleasure as well? But the idea there, again, is that Sarah submitted herself to her husband. And he says in verse number 5, this is the way that the women of old time, the holy women also, and then it says, who trusted in God. See, there's the key to submission. That you will trust God, that you'll take it as an act of faith to put yourself under your husband to say, Lord, I don't understand all of this, I don't get all of it, I don't even always like all of it, but I'm trusting you to do the right thing, to honor my submission and my obedience to you, and trusting that you will make this come out, that you will make that you will honor my obedience to you, because I'm really, Lord, submitting myself to you and not just my husband. So this injunction is not, again, incidental. It really is wrapped up into the gospel call that we would all be submitted to Christ in whatever position he wants to put us in. And he's going to talk about that when it comes to masters and slaves, but whatever position that God would put us in, that we would do it with cheer, that we would do it in the way that we should. And ladies, for you, you are to help your husband by submitting to him, getting out of the way, letting the Lord do the work in his life. So that's for you, ladies. Now, in verse number 19, back in Colossians 3, we read this: Husbands, love your wives, and be not bitter against them. The command is to love, to be willing to do whatever it takes to secure the best and the best happiness for your wife. That your life and your thoughts and plans, whatever it is, should be oriented around doing the best for your wife, to love her. He's not commanding us to have feelings for our wives. He's commanding us to remember our duty to protect, look after her, and seek after her wealth. Adam Clark in his commentary says this: the authority of the man over the woman is founded on his love to her, and this love must be such as to lead him to risk his life for her. As the care of the family devolves on the wife, and the children must owe the chief direction of their minds and formation of their manners to the mother, she has need of all the assistance and support which her husband can give her, and if she performs her duty well, she deserves the utmost of his love and affection. Now, I'll just say, whether she performs her duty well, she still deserves the utmost of his love and affection. Ephesians 5:28 says that the husband is to love his wife as he cherishes his own body. So, and again, he says, no man ever hated his own body. When we take care of ourselves, we want something, we get it. Right? You go to the gas station, you get yourself a snack, you take care of yourself, you should do that for your wife as well. What's the problem then that we encounter as guys when it comes to this? Problem number one, I'm just not very good at this sort of thing. You know, I'm not really someone who can just show affection and love. It's hard for me to do that, so I just don't, because it's really, really hard. I'm not very good at it. Or I don't feel like she really deserves it. Pastor, when she submits, I'll love her. Right? She has to get it right first, and then we'll see. Then I'll love her. Or I hope this isn't you, but hopefully not. But you feel like, well, I honestly don't know if I do love her. You've been listening to Satan's Lies, and you're just not sure where you are with that. What's the solution? Well, the solution, guys, back in Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Right? You don't have to. You should not love your wife in your own power and by your own example. You should love your wife as Christ loved the church. So when I think about when I go to God in prayer and I thank him for my salvation, I think to myself, there wasn't really anything worth saving with me. Like, hopefully you as a Christian can look at yourself and say, there wasn't really anything, like God didn't get anything out of saving me. He did it just because he loved me. The Bible says in 1 John that we love him. Why? Because he first loved us. And if he hadn't loved us, I mean, Romans 3 pretty clearly teaches that we wouldn't love God. And if there's anything, you say, oh yes, I love God. Well, he loved you first. And you wouldn't have loved him if he hadn't shown his love for you. And so Christ loved the church unconditionally. You may not know how to love, but you can learn to love like Christ loved the church. What did he do? He gave himself for it, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of the water by the word, that he might present it to himself, a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So men ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and the two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband. Okay, so again, what he says here is we are to love our wives like Christ loved the church. Now, you may not know how to love, but guys, you can learn. Let's just say, for some reason, that as a thought experiment, that God came and said, fellas, for the next month, I want you, instead of bringing a tithe, we're going to, just for a month, and let's say that you knew it was the Lord, just for a month, you're going to bring a lamb sacrifice to church, and you're going to kill it. Maybe outside or something, so that blood doesn't get on the carpet. But you're going to bring a lamb sacrifice to the church and kill it. And again, and you knew it was God. Well, that would present a problem for me. I don't know how to kill a lamb. I don't know how to slit the throat and catch the blood. I don't know how to get a lamb. But, and guys, maybe you're thinking the same thing. I wouldn't know what to do. But I bet if God said it, you'd find out how to do it, wouldn't you? Like, if God said, this is what I expect, you'd be like, well, I guess I'll get on YouTube and find out how to kill a lamb. I guess I'll call up John and see if he knows how to kill a lamb. He's probably butchered a few things, but maybe I could ask him. Or maybe I could find somebody who knows how to do this. I go to the Main Street Meats or something, but I'm figuring out how to do it if God told me to do it, right? Okay, so here's God telling you love your wife. Oh, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. But if God told you to do something, you do it. So you can learn how to do it. You can learn to love her like she wants to be loved, not how you know how to love. So here's part of the problem. I tried to show my life my wife loved once. I got her some flowers and she hated them. Never doing that again. Okay, well, there might have been some extenuating circumstances why flowers were not the appropriate thing in that moment. It may be that she has changed as a person and she now appreciates flowers. Maybe, though, that you're absolutely right. She didn't like flowers, but maybe there's another way you could do that. Stealing this from Gary Chapman, I think, is the one that first kind of popularized this. But there's at least 5 different ways that you can show love to somebody else, and those 5 ways are these: acts of service. You can do something for someone, and that shows love. You can give them gifts. That's the one we think about. Here's flowers, here's chocolate, here's a car, whatever it is, gifts. 3 would be words of affirmation. I'm just so appreciative of what you do. Thank you so much. Physical touch, and time spent together. Okay, so there's all different kinds of ways to love. You say, well, I don't know which one of those my wife likes. I know what I like. I like physical touch, and she doesn't seem to like that, and so I don't know what to do. Well, yeah, maybe she doesn't, and maybe you do, and that's just fine. But to love her in the way that you like to be loved, sometimes that works, and that's great if it does, but sometimes it doesn't, and it's up to you to find out what that way is. And probably the best way to do that would just be asking her, hey, how do you know that I love you? And she's not going to say, because you said so 21 years at the wedding altar. She'll say, I know that you appreciate me and love me when this happens, right? So I know that Amy's love language is acts of service. If I do things for her, that will show her love more than, way to go, Amy, words of affirmation, or yay. Not that she doesn't like that. Not that anybody doesn't like that. Everybody likes words of affirmation. But mine is time spent. I like it when people say, I want to spend time with you. Now, don't call me this week and say, Pastor, can we spend time together? Because I'll make time for you. But, anyway, all that. But what I'm saying is I know that I'm loved when someone's like, I just wanted to kind of spend time with you. I'm like, well, that's great. But that's not Amy's. And so I don't expect her to, if I just said, I want to spend time with you, and she's like, great, but I have to mop the floor. Can I just sit on the counter while you do that so we can spend time together? That will communicate something other than what I'm trying to communicate to her, right? Better for her to sit on the counter so she can spend time with me because she knows that's what I want, and me to mop the floor, right? Because that's acts of service. So it's not just about what you like, it's about how to love. So you can learn to love. Now those are just little things. Obviously there's bigger things, but guys, learn how to do this. 1 Peter 3, verse 7 tells us, likewise ye husbands dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Now there's too much in there for me to unpack, and so wait for me to go through 1 Peter at some point in the future. But in that verse it says that we as husbands ought to seek to understand our wives. Now you say that is an impossible thing, and you are absolutely right. That women are impossible to understand. Guys, we're also impossible to understand for women. They don't get us, and that's fine, right? We like the mystery. But we are to seek to understand in the Lord as much as we can about what our wife wants and likes, and what is going to be the best thing for her. You cannot just wait for her to submit. You must love her first, unconditionally. I've read enough books, and I've experienced this in my own life, that if you will, guys, love unconditionally, submission and all the other things that you're hoping for in your marriage will follow. Now, I've already passed the women, but I'll also say this, that I've read enough books and found in my own life that, ladies, when you submit, that the love will follow. All right? Now, you don't do it for that. I'm just saying, God knows what he's talking about when he designed men and women and put marriage together. It was his idea. So, now what he tells guys in this passage in Colossians 3, and this is interesting, I had to think about this a little bit. He says at the end, so whereas Paul in Ephesians goes into this huge long thing about Christ and the church, in Colossians he just says, and don't be bitter against them. Well, so where does that come from? Be not bitter against them. Where does that come from? I think what it's asking us to do is to not focus on the negative aspects of your wife. Living with someone is never easy because you find out all the little things. When you're dating and you're not living together, you spend this amount of time, you're putting your best foot forward, everything seems wonderful. Even little things you can kind of overlook. And you can't overlook it when all of a sudden you're in each other's space all the time. And you find little things that the giddiness and the silliness of early love don't cover anymore. And hopefully you're still in your honeymoon and you have no idea what I'm talking about. But in case you're a normal person, those little things can come up, and you, as anybody, can start to focus on those little, nicely idiosyncrasies, negatively annoyances, those little things. And it's very easy to focus on those things and to say, well, I'm da-da-da-da, and they're not da-da-da-da, right? Whatever that is. It's not hard to find reasons to wish that someone was better. Now, ladies, they're also looking for reasons that you might be better as well. So it goes both ways. The problem is we just don't see our own need to improve. We generally tend to see the need of others to improve. And so when that doesn't happen, there is a tendency toward bitterness. You must, as a man, find out what's wrong with this. Again, if it was your lawnmower, you'd be like, I got to figure this out. Okay? There's something wrong with your marriage. There's a little sputtering sound. There's something that's not quite working right. Figure it out. It may be that at the very root of something, you have some bitterness in your life. Bitterness against your wife for her not meeting the expectations that you had. You went past the vision of your wife and who she is, and maybe it was to the person that she was, or the person you wish she was, or some grand vision, and she's not meeting that expectation, and you become bitter in your heart. And what he says is to root that out, to confess it to God. God, I have not been fair to my wife. I have not been right by her. I have been expecting things that you're not expecting, and that she doesn't even know that I'm expecting. Lord, I confess that to you. To ask for God's help to overcome that, to change your expectations. Again, what I'm not saying is lower your expectations. I'm not, well, fine, this is just the way it is now. Guys, we do that too, don't we? Well, fine, this is just the way it is, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, all right, who is the gift that the Lord has given me? And what is it that I love about this person? And if you sat down and wrote those things out, you'd find many, many things. The problem is that we don't always focus on those things. Guys, we tend to be somewhat cynical at times and tend to focus on the negative. And that's with everything in life. And your wife has to be the one exception to that. You cannot have that mindset, and you cannot be bitter against them. Now, let's move to children, to parents. Back in Colossians 3, verse 20. Children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing unto the Lord. We have 3 Han kids here tonight, so I guess you're getting both barrels, guys. Sorry about this. And this is a hard message to preach to you guys because you do so well. So I'll start all of this by saying, you guys are awesome. You guys are great. Thank you so much. Now, having said that, the command is to obey. Children's job is to obey. With the authority that comes with parents comes the need for obedience. When police say, put your hands up, you can't be like, you have no authority. You know what? If they're looking for a gun, if they're afraid for their life, when they say put your hands up, even if you've not given them any reason to think that you have a gun, you put your hands up. You know, that's what you do. And they need the authority to say, do what I tell you to do. Get on the ground or whatever it is. They need the authority because they have the responsibility of keeping people safe. And so, children, when your parents say, obey me, it is not just the voice of the tyrant. The tyrant cares about himself. Your parents care about you. And I've had to have lots of talks with our kids and say, this is not just us trying to lord over you. We really do care about you, and we're really trying to look out for your best interest. And so you have to obey, because if you do, we will help you to avoid all kinds of problems in life. Parents then have the duty to teach their children to obey, to make it easier for them. Now, what's the problem with that? I would take answers, but I don't care. No, I'll answer for you because I was a child at one point too. One, obedience is hard. It's hard because you want to do your own thing, like talk to your brother during a message, instead of listen to your parents. Two, parents are inconsistent. How many of you parents here tonight have ever in your life been inconsistent? How many of you feel like you were inconsistent a whole lot? Yeah. It's hard to be consistent. It's really hard to be consistent. And when we're inconsistent, it's hard for you children to obey. Because you feel like, oh, it's like shifting sands. I just never know where I am. It's hard. Also, parents make it hard. We're not always clear about our expectations. You know, you break a rule and you didn't even know it was a rule. So you get in trouble. And then you're like, oh, come on. What's this all about? It's hard. What's the solution? Children, your job, this is going to make it easier for you, okay? If you, when your mom and dad say, obey, if you would look right past your mom and look right past your dad at the Lord, Jesus will be nodding at you, right? And it's not just obeying your parents, it's obeying the Lord. All right, if Jesus wants me to, then I will. It says, children, obey your parents in all things, for this is well-pleasing unto the Lord. It makes God happy for you to obey your parents. Over in Ephesians chapter 6, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and thy mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and that thou mayest live long on the earth. Remember that there is a reward for obedience. And if you won't do it for my sake, if you won't do it for your mom's sake, do it for the Lord's sake, and do it for your own sake to get reward in heaven. Remember, when you are thinking about how unfair your parents are and how inconsistent they are, that they are just people, and that they are going to make mistakes. Remember that they love you, and remember that your command is, when you feel bitter against your parents, remember that the command is not just to obey, because anyone can obey begrudgingly. I've done lots of that. It's very easy to go through the motions of obedience. It's a much more difficult thing to honor your parents. And if you'll start with, I want to honor my parents, then the obedience will come much, much easier. Can I just say, before I move on to the last one, and we're done, is I do believe that there's a time in your life where obeying your parents, that has an expiration date. Now, it might be different for any time. But there's going to be a day where, Evelyn, do this is not going to work. Okay? Especially when I give her to some young man, right? And then now she's his wife. Weird. I don't want to think about that anymore. I'm moving on. But there is coming a day where, there was a day where I didn't have to obey my mom and dad anymore. There's never been a day where I don't have to honor them. Was my mom perfect? No. Was my dad perfect? Is my dad perfect now? No. But I honor him because the Lord wants me to. And you might not have had a great mom or a great dad. They might have made a lot of mistakes, and they might have been not what they should be. And probably if they were sinners, they weren't. And yet, God calls us to honor them and to speak the truth. It's not like you have to whitewash everything, but to honor them. And I think that still goes even for today. The last one is parents to children. Colossians 3, verse 21 says fathers. And really it doesn't address parents, but ladies, I'll let you listen in, I guess. Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. The command is to not provoke. Now, raising your children is good. Making sure they get through childhood into adulthood alive is good, but that's a pretty low bar. Lots of people do just that. The foster care system can do just that. It's another thing to parent them well. And to do that, you are to not provoke them. Now, it's interesting. In Ephesians, it's mentioned positively. Ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. It's presented positively, but here in Colossians, just avoid the negative. Don't provoke your children to wrath. The problem is that when we raise our children, we do it often wrong. We provoke them to anger. We drive them. We frustrate them so that they feel helpless. We want to have a heavy hand. We want to make sure that there's order in the home. But often, I'm confessing this, we have a too heavy of a hand because we have not made it about raising them right. But for me, I fell into the trap early on of not wanting to be embarrassed by my children or by living by other people's expectations for parenting. I was so afraid that my children wouldn't turn out that I felt like I needed to really be hard on them and went way, way too far the other way and had to really correct them. I thank God for good examples in my life that really helped me to correct them. And I don't get it perfect all the time. I'm not saying that, so guys, you don't have to snicker or laugh. I don't get it perfect. I know I don't. But I have, at least in a lot of ways, really had some victory in this area of not provoking my children. I do praise the Lord for that. But we sometimes discourage them. The word here where it says, provoke not your children to anger lest they be discouraged. The word discouraged means without spirit. That you just drive the passion out of them. That literally, that's what it means. That you would dishearten them. That you would make it so that your children feel like, what's the point? There's no point. Anything I do is not going to make it. It's never going to be good enough. To just crush their spirit. And I've seen a lot of parents that parent well as far as behavior goes, but when it comes down to the child's spirit, they've gotten it wrong. They've squelched all ambition. They've squelched all passion for the things that they should do, ambition and those kind of things. I said ambition, but they've squelched the ability to make decisions even on their own. And what God calls us to is to guide our children in the way that they should go, but not for them to be totally dependent on us. And again, for me, sometimes I've been tempted to set the bar so high that no one could attain to it. It's a bar that even I couldn't attain to at that age, and yet I expect my children to, and I had to repent of that. I've also had the problem myself of being inconsistent. It's very hard to be consistent. As a parent, you make rules. That's what I want. I want a home that's like this, and oh yeah, that's good too. Let's put that in. And then it's like, okay, it's like now I have to actually enforce all of this. Okay, and I'm going to be really good on this, but then I'm going to miss this. And one child, you shouldn't do that. You're grounded for 2 weeks, and another child, oh, that wasn't right. Go sit in the corner. Like, wait a minute, what? It's hard to be consistent, and because of that, we tend to discourage our children and to provoke them to wrath. The solution is, again, in chapter 6, verse 4, to bring them up in the nurture, the word means chastisement, and admonition means calling attention to or to warn our children. The biggest thing I found in my own life is to daily ask God for wisdom. James 1:5 says, if we lack wisdom, let's ask of God, and he'll give it to us liberally. And you need wisdom to parent your children. And Caleb's 18, so he barely, he's not out of the house yet. So I cannot address adult children. But so this is just forecasting, right? I'm going to go ahead and assume that I'm going to need lots of wisdom to parent my adult children as well. That I need God's help and wisdom. I need God to change hearts and move things around. And there's going to be a lot of things. When they were 1, 2, 3, I had a lot more influence over what they were going to become. Now in their life, I can pray for them. I can help them. I can have those conversations with them. I thank God for that. But either way, whether they're 1 or 18 or 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever, they need your prayer and your prayer for wisdom. And so God is calling us to rely on his wisdom for all of it. I would say for you, and I guess I'll just point to the Joneses because you're the ones here, learn to parent in justice and not in anger. I think that's one of the reasons that children are bitter, that their parents are angry about what they did instead of justice. And what I mean by justice is, this is what I've told you needs to happen. You did not do that. and so now I have to discipline you. It's not a matter of anger. Emotions don't have to come into it. There may be sorrow on their part. There should be. But it's not about like, I'm angry with you for doing this. This is justice. You should not have done this, and you did. And so now I need to correct you with the hope that next time you'll do the right thing. I can't tell you how many times I've told my children, let's let this never happen again. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here again. Okay? Can you just make sure that you do the right thing so we don't have to do this again? I don't like disciplining children. I would much rather have them do the right thing. So that's what we're going for. Learn to discipline in justice, not anger or fear of others. God addresses all four of these relationships here in Colossians. The wives to husbands. It's not easy. Men are not easy to be married to. I don't know this personally because I've never been married to a man. And Amy never says that. But I know me, and I know I could never be married to me. I don't know how she does it. And guys, you could probably say amen. You don't have to say it out loud, that's fine. But you can say that. And men, you're to love your wives. Children, you are to obey your parents. Parents, you are to raise your children in a way that doesn't provoke them to wrath and doesn't breed any bitterness or discouragement, but that reflects the love that a father has for us. I can't wait to get to Hebrews 12. We can talk about this a little bit more, but this is enough admonition here for tonight. Lord, help us to have Christian families, and Lord, help us to use these things to help others. Lord, there are lots of parents in our church that are just starting off and need this kind of help. And help us, Lord, to disciple them and to help them. And marriages, Lord, that need help, that need fixing, that need encouragement, that need to be shored up a little bit. And Lord, only you can do that. I pray that you would. I pray that you'd make our church, Lord, a beacon of the right kind of Christian families. Not so that we might brag, but so that we might help others, Lord, to avoid so many pitfalls, Lord. We know that the Christian family is under so much attack. And so, Lord, help us, please, to have families that reflect Christ and the relationship Christ has for the church and for the Father. And we ask all this in Christ's name.